Hey there, hey, it is Michelle with Brilliant Quest, and today we're going to be talking about fears. But not only fears, we're going to be talking about fear spells. So there's this book that since I started reading it about maybe 3 years ago, it's the book that keeps on giving. And it's an allegorical kind of book. It's written by Napoleon Hill, the author of Think and Grow Rich. And I've talked about it on other videos that I've done, but it's called Outwitting the Devil. And y'all, this book is really good. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about this because this book, when it was written back in the 1900s, the early to mid 1900s, it broke down what a lot of society continuously to this day suffers with. And that is having a spell of fear on it. You, me, we, globally. Okay. So let me tell you a few things, a few big takeaways from this book so that we can go from there and then build, because Big Sis Michelle got you. I'm going to teach you how you can break this spell off of your life. So let's get into it, okay? So from the book, Outwitting the Devil, Napoleon Hill, quote unquote, interviews this devil, and the devil gives him game on two specific areas that are of note. Now, he talks a lot about a lot of things, but these are the ones that we're going to be concentrating on for identifying and breaking this fear spell off of us, okay? All right. So he talks about fears through thoughts, and he talks about fears through habits. Now, it's important. Let's talk about the thoughts first, because that's the first part you come to in the book. And when the devil is being forced, if you will, to tell Napoleon, how do you capture souls? How do you get people, to be under your control? And the devil talks about the state of drifting aimlessly, apathetically. Drifting in our context is the same as having languishing, having numbness, depression, anxiety, panic, all of those things that are plaguing a lot of people today, whether it be on a continuous basis, seldomly, or, from time to time. And when he said this, he said, there are two main habitual fear thoughts that I can get people to accept. And that was the thing that was kind of eye-opening for me. I mean, I knew it, but the way Napoleon put it with the interview with the devil just made it open up. And that is, the devil said that many people believe that every thought in their mind is theirs. And he's like, no, it's not. He's like, if I can get you to listen to that thought and you do what you do, especially if you don't realize and check that, hey, this is not my thought. And instead you're like, why am I having these thoughts? Don't ask why am I having these thoughts. Identify that thought. Be like, that's not mine. You can't live here. Get out. He said, I can get them. And he said, out of the habitual fear thoughts, he said there are two main areas that do the heavy lifting, like the 20% that does the 80. And that is the fear of poverty and the fear of death. Now, I just want you to just pause for a second. How many times during the course of a day have you had a thought about your livelihood, or a thought about what would happen if you couldn't take care of yourself, or do you have enough money, or do you have enough food, or do you have enough friends, or whatever? Okay. Those are all in the poverty. Those are all in the realm of lack. Those are all in the low vibration of the devil, if you will. And then the next one is death. So fear of poverty and fear of death. How many times have you thought about an ailment or a fear? Oh, I don't want to get this. Or I don't want to get that. You get a strange little thing. Oh, I hope it's not this. I hope it's not that. Those live in the realm of the fear of death. Okay. And then he talks about the other ones, but of them, fear of poverty and death are the biggest ones. So the other ones are a fear of old age, poor health, criticism, and loss of love. Now, when he talks about loss of love, he's not just talking about romantic love. He's talking about being ostracized, canceled, no friends, isolation, alienation, no connection to society. And so those are the thoughts that the devil can get you in. Have you ever heard that adage that says an idle mind is the devil's workshop? This is what Napoleon is talking about right here. How the devil will introduce a thought to you and you grab onto it, not checking that, was this really my thought? And then because we are creators, we do the heavy lifting, because in the book, Napoleon's like, well, don't we have free will? And the devil's like, of course you have free will. That's why all I have to do is sprinkle the seed, and then you'll do all the work for me, and then I've got you. And he said, even in the book, he gave it a numerical value. And the devil said that he could get 98% of people with this because they are not aware of this law. And this is the law. And when I first started reading, I was like, this law, it just didn't make sense to me until it did. And it's called the law of hypnotic rhythm. Now, believe it or not, you know this law. You just didn't hear it with these particular words. You know the law because you know night and day. You know the seasons. You know how the tides come in and go out. You know the rhythm of the earth. And that's what it's talking about. Hypnotic rhythm. Now, that's the word, hypnotic, because hypnotic lulls you into a trance. You know, we can't feel, thank goodness, this ball, this earth spinning at over 1,000 miles an hour, twirling around the sun. But it's there, and it's hypnotic, and it comes in rhythm. It comes in seasons. It comes in cycles. It comes in circles and loops. And just like the way the earth happens and exists with this hypnotic rhythm, so do we. And so when you're talking about the law of hypnotic rhythm with your mind and how the devil can get you and the fear spell can be cast, it's because when the law is in action, the hypnotic rhythm, the more something happens, the more it becomes permanent. So the more you have seasons, the more they become permanent. The more you have the tides coming in and out, the more they become permanent. The more the sun rises and sets, the more you have rhythm. And thus, the more a human thinks about something over time, the more it becomes permanent. And so the law of hypnotic rhythm is those thoughts and even actions that you do over time become more and more ingrained into who you are, to the point where you don't recognize them. You don't think about them. And this is how a fear spell is cast on your life. And 9 times out of 10, we did it to ourselves. All right. So also in this book, he talks about the negative habits. Okay. And so with the negative habits, the devil said that these are the habits that feed his ability to get you trapped into a negative effect of the law of hypnotic rhythm. One thing I did like about how Napoleon was writing about this, he didn't just cast it as, doom, all hope is gone. He did also bring up the fact that if you know the negatives, strive for the positives, and the law of hypnotic rhythm works the same. And this is how he was able to describe people who are successful, people who have their needs met, people who have joy, have love, have friends, because they do the same thing, except for they don't focus on a fear of poverty, death, old age, poor health, criticism, and loss of love. And they don't operate or feed the negative habits of humanity that include fear, superstition, greed, avarice, lust, anger, revenge, vanity, and laziness. Now, let me repeat those again. These are what the devil called the negative habits. And those are fear, superstition, greed, avarice. Now, greed and avarice, sometimes people use those interchangeably, but I just need you to understand that avarice can be greed, but avarice is really about stinginess, about penny pinching, about fear of not getting what you already have back, whereas greed is about accumulating and getting more. Oh, just more, Cookie Monster more. All right. So just understand those. And one of the things that became evident as I was going through this was that this is a spell that we cast on ourselves. When you trigger the law of hypnotic rhythm, you are triggering a spell that comes in and just works, whether you are even aware of it or not. And the good thing is today we break it and we start working on the good spells. Okay. So most failure, if you really think about it, most failure is a mental self-limitation to create a solution. And when you have that mental self-limitation to create a solution, it's because your belief system is such that you don't believe that you can come up with a solution. And that may or may not be true, but not always. And there are ways to get a solution, no matter what. Trust me, I'm working through some solutions right now, and I'm amazing myself every day at why, because I'm practicing what I preach, and I have broken this fear spell off of me in certain areas, and my life is changing. Okay. So thoughts and actions. You have to be careful because you can be activating the hypnotic rhythm law and not realize it. So if, for instance, when something scary happens, when something overwhelming, complicated, when something that causes you to have to push through your normal amount or level of attention or efforting, when you start to retreat from that, it gets easier and easier to retreat. That is a tip-off that the law of hypnotic rhythm is happening. And so what happens is, compounded over time, it becomes permanent. That when anything that is complex or anything that causes you to have to do a little more efforting, that puts you into an uncomfortable pain spot, you guessed it, the fear spell kicks in, and before you know it, you have said, I can't deal with this, or this is not for me, or y'all doing too much, or whatever. And being able to just even realize what the fear spell looks like in your life is going to put you so far ahead of where you thought you could be that it's going to blow your mind. All right. So now what I want to talk about is I want to break down this whole fear spell thing, because I want you to go on and start identifying. If you only identify one area of where I keep saying the fear spell is working in your life is going to change. Trust me. Your life's going to change. Now, y'all know here, I'm not going to give you no pie in the sky stuff. I'm going to give you stuff that is practical, that is real, that I'm dealing with or have dealt with and experienced in other people's lives. And so, because I'm not going to waste your time. So let's get into it. Fear spells. Okay. So the fear spell happens when you have, and I'm looking at my notes, you guys, when you have an unchecked or a subliminal fear response to an emotion, a feeling, a belief, or even a behavior. Remember when I just talked about the reaction you might have to shut down when something is difficult and you come up against stuff. It might not be the same type of thing, but you come up against stuff over and over, and it gets easier and easier to the point where it gets so smooth that you actually are able to advocate for the fear spell. Like, oh, you don't have to do that. That's just too complicated. It don't have to be like, and you're not doing anything. You're not getting anything done. And the thing about a fear spell is the way you know that you're in a fear spell is what the scope of what you're able to do shrinks more and more and more. And over time, you're like, wait a minute. I remember a time when I could just get this done or that done. And that is a wake-up call that there is a fear spell that has been activated in your life because the law of hypnotic rhythm has been rocking your boat and giving you more of what you've thought about, you've acted on, and you've believed. Okay? So that's the first part of a fear spell. I hope this is good for you because this will free you. Oh, this will free you up. Trust and know that. Okay, so the next part is when you are triggering fear. Remember how I talked about the book and how the devil just laid out some areas? I want you to look at these areas because they are the shortcuts to let you know the areas of the fear spell. So remember, you've got poverty. You've got death. Now, these are fear of poverty, of death, of old age or aging, fear of loss of love, fear of criticism, fear of poor health. These are the big areas, especially the fear of poverty and death. If you are having reactions and they fall into those fears, ding, 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 ding. Yes, fear spell has been activated and you want to arrest that thought and you want to take action. Now I'm getting ahead of myself because I'm going to be talking about how to break the spells, but you see, and then the negative habits. So when you have the fear spell, you get into those habitual thoughts, and then the negative habits start to build. So that's where you start having greater fear, because that's a negative habit. You start having superstitions. You start having greed and avarice. Like, oh, my world is such that there is lack. There's only lack. So I need to keep what I have, and I need to hoard, and I need to be greedy and get more, because if I don't get it for myself, everybody else will take it from me. See, you get into anger. You get into vanity, laziness. I'm talking about the bad laziness. That's the laziness, because I've talked about laziness where those people are all about being the most effective and efficient so that they don't have to expend any more energy than is absolutely necessary. But I'm talking about the laziness, that's the slothfulness. That's the laziness of doing an action to the detriment of yourself, where you don't even do the necessary to help yourself. That's lazy. And that's what they're talking about. And revenge and lust. And so those are the negative habits that start to either be created or strengthened because you have triggered these fears, and you have triggered them by retreating, by losing ground, by giving into the thoughts of them, by inaction. And that is why they say the idle mind is the devil's workshop. That is why the devil wants you into a state of drifting. And when I'm saying devil, I'm not talking about a character with a pitchfork. I am talking about the malaise of humanity, of things that, because we live this life, they can be entrapments. There are mental traps afoot, people. There really are. All right. So now I promised we were going to give you some steps on how to break these. And can I just pause and say that I had to work through these steps, and it took me a minute. And so I have boiled them down, if you will, or condensed them down to the 4 that you do them, you will see progress. You got to believe in yourself. You got to have intention. You got to be mindful that the law of hypnotic rhythm is not a bad law. It is not against you. It's just that when you know better, you do better, and you cause the law to work for you and not against you. All right. So I want to start by talking about how the process of the fear spell is enacted. So the first thing that happens is you get that thought. Remember how the devil said I can plant a seed? And what ends up happening is you listen to, or you entertain a little whisper of a mental lie. Okay. Then two, you start to react to it in some kind of way. Now, the spell, the fear spell, when you react, is you react in the negative or in the fear response. Because either way, you're going to get that whisper of a lie and you're going to react to it. So the way you react to it is the beginning of whether it becomes a fear spell or a faith and success spell in your life. Napoleon did. He talked about, he says, when you look at successful people, the law of hypnotic rhythm has been built in them such that they cannot fail. Because remember, the more you think about something, the more you think and act on something, that the universe makes it a permanent feature of who you are. And when you have people that when things and tough times come and they listen to the lie that says, oh, that's impossible. But the way they react is, hold my beer and watch me. You get more of it. And then it becomes to where they become almost invincible. And they do things that the person standing right next to them could never, to the point where they live in a different reality, even possibly a different universe, but having sharing the same space, but living in different realities. That's how powerful this is. So one, the lie comes in, you listen and entertain it. Two, you react to it in a fearful way. That's the trigger. That's the trigger. Three, you start to reinforce the lie, the mental lie, by obeying it. When the mental lie tells you, well, we're going into a recession and things are going to be tough and nobody is spending money and nobody is doing this. And you're like, woe is me. I'm not going to be able to get another job or ever make any other money. When you start, that's reacting. That is either creating or fortifying the spell, the fear spell that is over your life. All right. You see how smooth this smooth criminal is? Just operating with free will. And then the next one is that the lie becomes your belief system and it becomes your personal truth. So that's the process of the lie. Okay. So I'll repeat that real quick. The lie comes into your mind. And remember, the devil even told you every thought you have is not your own. And sometimes these mental lies are from what you consume as entertainment. Because a lot of people use the news as entertainment. A lot of people have what they call itching ears for the gossip, for the news, for the titillating, for the horrors of humanity. Be careful of that, because that can also act as the catalyst for the fear spell being activated in your life. Okay, so you listen and entertain the lie. You react to the lie in a fear response instead of a faith, a strength, a power, a self-belief. I don't have to accept this lie kind of thing. And then the third one is you reinforce it by obeying it. And then the fourth one is it becomes a part of your belief system to the point where it becomes a personal truth. Okay, got that one? All right, so here is how we start breaking it. So I told you 4 ways that it starts to happen in your life. Let's talk about the 4 steps that you can use to break fear spells off of your life. Okay. And you notice and let me pause right here. You notice I'm saying a fear spell. It's because fear has a place in our life. Fear will help you to respect and honor stuff, to go back and reanalyze it so that you don't make stupid mistakes that will cost you your life. So fear has a place, but when fear is casting a spell on you to immobilize you where you can't see how to do anything, that is a problem. And that's why we're calling this a fear spell. Okay. All right. So breaking it down, here we go. So the first thing is, I want to just tell you, there's this wonderful young lady. She's young, and I think she's a modern day philosopher. She has this book called The Mountain Is You, but the one I got this from is called 101 Essays to Make You Think. And in there, this little snippet she said, fear. And you know what she said fear is? Fear equals interest. And so when you have the fear response, instead of, treating it like, get away from me, understand that there is new interest, a pattern interrupt from your normal routine to cause you to make a choice or a decision as to how you're going to react to this new stimuli, this new input. All right. So with that, understanding that fear, we're going to reframe it. That fear is not scary. Fear is interest. You're interested. And interest lives in the realm of curiosity. And curiosity is one of the big internal motivators to keep you motivated, to keep you having momentum and moving forward. Okay. So I'm just showing you how all this ties up to where, yes, you can break this fear spell. All right. So we're going to reframe fear into interest/curiosity. Okay. All right. So number 1, we are, like I said, we're going to reframe fear into interest. But number 1, first and foremost, pause. Because fear is visceral, meaning that it can bypass your mind to get a response out of you. And so I want you to practice on realizing what fear feels like in your body, in your mind, in your soul. And by doing that, because it's hard to get into the logic of reframing when you're having a physical lizard brain kind of reaction to the situation. So the first thing is, when I was a kid and they were doing fire drills, they would tell you to, if you sense fire, stop, or you're on fire, stop, drop, and roll. So that's going to be this one. Stop, drop, and roll when you realize or you suspect that fear is taking over. For some people, fear shows up like anger first. So, that unease in your tummy where you're like, oh, I don't like this feeling. Realize that a lot of times that fear and anger can be intermeshed. Okay. That's why you'll have people that strike out at you, but they're fearful and they think it's anger. So be mindful of that. So the first thing is to focus on quickly understanding when you're dealing with fear and use what Brianna Wiest said. Change the word or the concept of fear in your body and what you're dealing with into interest. And I added on curiosity, because curiosity is part of internal motivation. And you want every help you can get, all right, to break the spell. So that's number one. Number two is you're going to now, and the reason why you had to realize and reframe what fear is because now I'm going to ask you to do something counterintuitive. And that is to press in, push in to the fear. Instead of retreating, you're going to push into it. You're going to be like, yeah, I feel this. I'm scared. But so what? What you going to do about it? Those kinds of things. Confront it. Push into the fear. Because what it's going to do, it's going to allow you to, once you start pushing into the fear, you can start breaking down the components. And there's that acronym that says fear is what? False evidence appearing real. When you push into it, be like, how is this so? I talked about in a different video about working with your inner critic instead of trying to fight your inner critic, and interviewing the inner critic where when it brings you negative stuff that puts you into the fear response, say, demand that it gives you evidence that makes that true. And that's exactly what this is talking about. Fear, false evidence appearing real. Okay. What makes this real? Show me the evidence that makes this real. That's how you're pushing into it. And a lot of this is happening in split seconds. So I'm not telling you that the first time this happens that you're going to conquer it in a flash. But now that you know better, you're going to do better, because it did not take you one day to build this fear spell. And it's not going to take you one day in most cases to break the spell. And that spell will try you because you're dealing with the law of hypnotic rhythm. And remember, it's over time. Over time. Think about how powerful water is. It doesn't have to be a strong stream, but enough water rolls over a rock, it will cut the rock. The rock will not win over the water. So that's the same thing. Give yourself grace, give yourself patience, give yourself mercy and time, but do it on the regular. Okay, so that's number two. You're going to lean into it. You're going to challenge fear to give you evidence that is truth. Okay, the next thing, three. So in the third part, you're going to start doing counteractions. So whereas you retreated and became smaller and shrunken by the fear response that would trigger the habit that you didn't even know you had built, you're going to consciously work on counteractions. Okay. And you're going to do this by seeking out experiences that prove the fear wrong. So for instance, like I've got some documents that are required for some things that I have to do. And the good thing is because I've been working on my fear response, I noticed it exactly, because I was like, I've never done this type of form before. It's very complicated. And I actually pushed away. I was like, oh no, we're going to lean into this. And so instead of saying, I'll come back to it, because that's a lie we tell ourselves, I was like, nope, we're going to get into this. I started Googling. I started looking at the available different ways to get it done. And of course, the complicated, get this professional to help you kind of stuff rolls. But then I was like, I'm not giving up. If they know how to do it, I know how to do it, because I only need to get it done once. So I don't have to, get their services. Do you know? By pushing into the fear and not giving up for the low hanging fruit, or the first thing that came to me, I pressed in and I got it done. And I got it done faster than I would have thought. I was like, oh my gosh. So like I said, I am not telling you pie in the sky stuff that I think will work. I'm telling you stuff that, like I said, I've had to condense it down to the stuff that gives the most bang for the buck. So do not think of this as Captain Obvious where, oh, duh, do it, because the application of it is harder than what you're hearing, but you got to do it. All right. So number three is you're going to seek out experiences and actions that contradict what the fear is telling you. Then the next thing, number four, is you're going to take intentional action for the purpose of building an entirely new experience, because that is what it takes to cause the law of rhythm to stop swinging to the left and start swinging to the right. So that, well, I guess it would be left and right for you. Anyway, I'm gonna learn this mirroring stuff, y'all. Because if you've gotten a habit, a fear spell on you that has been ingrained in you for the last 10, 15, 20 years, you're going to have enough counter push for it to break up and stop fighting you and start swinging in the way you want and need it to benefit you. And that's part of the spell breaking. That's why I'm telling you, I'm not trying to keep it from you saying you just do this and that. No, it's going to be an ongoing process, because it has to be over time and it has to become a new counter habit. Okay. So think about this too. What you're going to be doing when you are taking this intentional action to reverse this spell is you're going to be doing the things that give you proof, that give you evidence, and give you experience to contradict the belief and the personal truth that you've maybe accepted but didn't realize what you were doing. That was actually a fear spell and not the truth at all. And understand this, that action changes beliefs. I talk about a lot of journaling. And I have a daily habit of journaling. And there are certain things that I write in the journal. And I have developed a belief system that is ever evolving. I have developed a routine that addresses the law of hypnotic rhythm. And I have determined that there is nothing that I face that without doing the action that I can't overcome. Because when you do the action, when you do it to break the belief, when you do take the steps, the action is wonderful in that it will let you know when you need help. It will lead you to the help you need. And the funniest part is in my old belief system, I used to think that taking action meant that it was only me that was going to have to take this big action. And no, taking action is the first step. And the resources start to align themselves with you because you are taking action. You are intentionally moving forward, and the right people, the right resources at the right time start to line up so that you get done what you need to. And thus, the more experience and evidence you get, the more that fear spell must be broken. And so that's the thing that I need you to understand. So I'm gonna do a quick recap, and then I want you to put in the comments. All right. I want you to write this word. If you made it to this point, I want you to put in the comments action. Okay. So the recap is to break the spell. What you're going to do is you're going to start practicing on how to realize when fear is coming into your body, your mind, your soul, your spirit. And you're going to reframe fear by, instead of it being called fear, it's going to be called interesting. You're interested and you're curious. The next thing, number 2, is what you're going to do is you're going to push into the fear. You're going to challenge it, because fear is false evidence appearing real. And you're going to challenge it. Is it really real? Give me concrete proof, evidence that this is true. The next thing is you're going to start taking counter action to develop experiences to combat that fear. And then 4, you're going to start to develop the habit of looking for actions, experiences, and things that counter the effect of the fear spell by giving you new reasons and new beliefs where you're able to move forward. All right. And so understand this, that whether you realized it or not, you probably cast some fear spells over yourself, whether you were open to a constant diet of negativity or of fear, because fear is contagious. It's an emotion, and emotions are contagious. Or whether you have just a natural propensity to be a little more pessimistic than others. It's okay. You're not alone. We all go through this. But this right here, understanding this is going to help you. So do not fall into a habitual thought pattern of fearing poverty, death, criticism, old age, loss of love, or I did say that, criticism. Don't do that. Do not feed in to those negative habits of the fear, superstition, greed, anger, avarice, vanity, of laziness, and of lust. Say no to them. And now that you understand how a fear spell is erected by entertaining lies in your mind and then reacting to them in a negative way and then reinforcing them by doing stuff to obey them, and then having your whole life and belief system changed into a fear where you fear a lot of stuff, you're going to be so powerful because you have broken the spell. So guess what? Yep, my time is up. I thank you. This is Michelle, your big sis with Brilliant Quest. Now go on and watch this next video on your Brilliant Quest, and I'm going to see you sooner than later. Don't forget to check the links in the description, and you really want to check the links in the description. I have some great stuff announced in there for you. I'll see you soon. Bye.